time for Expert Alert, your chance to ask questions and get answers from experts.
Well, good morning and thank you for joining us on WLOX's Expert Alert on all of our streaming platforms. Now, if you would like to ask questions, this is kind of a question and answer segment when we talk to the experts and ask them your questions. Join us on our Facebook page, and then you will see right there in the comment section, ask your question there, and we will get those questions answered by our expert, which is Justin Allen with eAgent. Good to see you again.
Definitely.
How are you?
Good chat, definitely. It's been a wild month, so I think it's been good though.
So I was gonna say, is wild good?
Wild's good. Wild's a good problem to have.
It is.
Everybody's, I think, waking up after the hibernation over the winter, and everybody's ready to sell and buy and all that kind of good stuff, and everything's happening.
Houses are covered in pollen.
Yeah,
everybody's
everybody's sneezing and all that kind of stuff.
Time to get the cleanup going.
That's right.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because today we want to talk about how to prep your house to sell.
Yeah.
If you're in the market to sell your home and it's that time, we're going to give you some helpful tips on how to get it ready. So when you're getting ready to sell your house, what are probably the first 3 or 4 things you need to do before you, I guess, do you need to get an agent first? Do you need to get it ready first?
Well, I think you need to get the right agent first. You know how that goes?
Aha!
So there's a national stat that was out last year that right at 70% of agents maybe sold one property or none over the course of the nation, not just here locally. And I think just having a seasoned agent that knows what they're doing and knows how to get you the exposure that you're needing for the property, that's going to probably be the number one thing. And then take their advice. I don't know how many times I've heard some people say, like, well, my agent told me to do this and I just reluctantly didn't, and then it ended up not working like we wanted it to. But I think at the end of the day, try to do what your agent says. And take their words of advice, to heart. But I think really when it comes down to making sure you have the right agent, if you have the certain kind of property, if it's waterfront, if it's land, if it's an investment property, if it's luxury property, those kind of things, make sure that the agent understands how to market your specific property or the area, that understands the area, that's really familiar with the area. I think that's going to probably be a key factor. And then I think another big thing that a lot of people don't do and a lot of agents ask them to do is get a pre-inspection. Find out what's wrong with the house, because there's going to be a junction box in the attic that's uncovered with every house.
Exactly.
Every house is going to have this, So you might as well go ahead and start, taking care of those red flags before, you get somebody under contract, and then, then they start second guessing themselves. I feel like, you can hook one, and then getting them in the boat's a little different sometimes,
sure.
right? And having that pre-inspection done and having a lot of those things taken care of, I think takes a lot of worry off the buyers, right? Because they're already thinking, I hope this is what we want it to be, right? And I think with having those inspection things already taken care of, it tells the buyer this house is well maintained.
Right.
And that's really what it, that's the impression you're wanting to give, and they feel good about moving forward. Not being one of these homes, I don't know how many times, you may have done this too when you're house hunting. You'll see, 8, 10, 12 houses, something like that over a period of time, and you have like these nicknames you'll give them. It's the cracked granite house.
Yep.
It's the red barn house. It's the high grass in the backyard house. All that, just
to
stuff,
help you
right?
remember, when you start seeing them all, they all kind of melt
Yeah,
together.
they do, but what's funny to me is that on the vast majority of the time, they have a negative nickname instead of a positive nickname, right? So the ones that kind of filter themselves to the top of the list, they'll just, like, those are my top 1, 2, 3. And then everybody else gets these kind of negative nicknames.
Sure.
So you want to take care of all that stuff and, repaint those pink walls and, take all the creepy dolls off the shelves, all those kind of things, right? So you don't get a negative nickname.
Sure.
So I think that's it.
My agent suggested that I take all of the pictures, the family pictures,
Exactly.
especially of myself, down,
Yeah.
get rid of them.
Yeah.
Because it makes it easier for people to envision their things
Correct.
in the home when you don't have so many personal things up.
For sure, because then when you think about it, you can't see yourself there when you're constantly seeing somebody else there.
Right.
Right. So and just declutter things. If you're planning on if you're really wanting to sell, you should already go ahead and start moving. Start packing this stuff up. I mean, because it's going to take a while, and if you've ever moved, there's tons of stuff in nooks and crannies that you didn't think you had, forgot about, and it's like you thought this one U-Haul was going to work, and it's like, no, that plus 2 storage units is what's happening, right? So I think that's that's another positive spin, is that just declutter and depersonalize the property. And two, I think a lot of times when we send out professional photographer to get video, we get photos, we get a 3D virtual tour of the property, and I always tell my clients to put away any kind of personal information. So there's like the cameras today have like high def, and you don't want somebody in another country just zooming in on like a checkbook or something like that, right?
Sure.
So a lot of that kind of stuff I think makes a big impression. But I think if you don't have the right photography and the video and all that kind of stuff, it really you start getting eliminated from the list.
Right.
Really quick.
Because you can't see it. This is not the time. This is not the season that it was. I don't know, 5 years ago when people were paying cash for houses sight unseen.
Yeah. Oh,
like
no.
that was happening.
Oh, that was happening in droves. Yeah.
That's not today.
No, it's not. It's a little slower pace, but what I think is interesting is, I think it's still faster paced than before COVID.
Sure.
Because we were having the norm for decades was like 6 months on the market.
Right.
Like that's the norm, and I did that for a long time, and I think COVID sped those numbers up. But I think at the end of the day, I think we're at like around 100, 120 days, depending on if you're pricing it right, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So it's still in that 3 months, 4 months mark, and that's been over the winter time, and it's going to start speeding up in that 60, 90 days now.
That you said something key. In my experience, it also important to make sure that you're going with an agent who is full time. Someone who is doing this as a side hustle, or someone who has got a 9-to-5 job but they do this on the weekends, doesn't get the same amount of exposure, doesn't have the same experience, doesn't dive into it as deeply as somebody who's doing this as the only operation. Yeah,
and I think when it comes down to it, it's like I don't know why I want to give this analogy, but somebody, if you're in a pinch, someone in a taxi cab could give birth. Right, to get help someone give birth, right, and that's happened plenty of times. But ultimately, you want them to be, with a seasoned doctor that understands what's going on and take care of any issues that pop up, right? Because issues do pop up. But there are times where, you can skate by and the guy that's a taxi driver can work.
But that's not your goal. That's not your birth plan.
Exactly.
You're not. I think I'm going to get in a cab and have this baby today.
No. But at the end of the day, I think when it comes down to it, you want somebody seasoned that understands that there's going to be problems. We're going to prep for the problems, and then if we don't get them, that's fine, but we're going to make sure that we have those hurdles kind of seen ahead of time.
You mentioned something a second ago about whenever you set the price. I think that is kind of like the first headbutting that sellers and maybe agents have, is that this is their home. This is what they've poured their life into, whether they've lived in it for 5 years or 35 years. Yeah. They have a different understanding, and maybe not all the time. Maybe they just want to get out of it. I'm literally the most aggressive, ready to sell seller that you've ever seen, and maybe they're willing to do. But do you find that's where the rubber meets the road, is when you're trying to decide what the fair market price is?
No, actually not.
You don't?
No. I know it's very important for sure, but I don't really get a lot of pushback from sellers. I think a lot of times, they've seen a Zestimate, whether it's good or bad, or if it's right or wrong, and I think they've got a sense of an idea of like a general ballpark figure of what they think they can have, and then also what what's owed on their mortgage, and all those kind of things plays in, and if they've made improvements to the property. But I think a lot of agents end up pricing the property to where the market was, according to the comps, if it will appraise. And personally, I don't do that. I weight my pricing based off about 75% on what's available on the market. What's our competition? Who are we going up against? What's the amenities? What's the difference? They have got some 3 or 4 car garage and we only have 2, those kind of things. And I'm basing it off of about 75% on what's on the market, 25% that has comped out. So we need to make sure that we get an appraisal, that it meets appraisal. But I think the competition is really where it's at. And if you've got a lot of them on the market, then we need to be a little more aggressive. And then that's all. If they're not going to be that motivated, hey, you want to take a year? Okay, we can take a year. But you're just going to make sure that we're setting that expectation up front.
Whenever you mentioned, I just forgot what you mentioned a second ago. You're talking about improvements to the house. What are some of those improvements that if you're going into it and we need to sell this house, we want to be out of it in a year, but we want to make some improvements to make it more have more curb appeal, What are some of those improvements that I think are worth making, and those improvements that maybe you dump 10 grand into an improvement that doesn't really add up when it comes to the appraisal? What are some of those rules of thumb?
I think visually the kitchen and bathrooms are always going to be a big plus, because those are the most intimidating renovations for a buyer to do. Everybody can like put in new carpet and paint, right? So those are the bedrooms, and those are pretty much, you know, plainer or easy to deal with. So visually, the kitchen and bathrooms, you know, an update there. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is the age of the roof. The age of the roof, it will kill the deal for buyers because they can't afford the insurance. So they may be able to afford the monthly payment. Once you add in the insurance, then it creates more problems. So we have to factor in maybe the seller paying for a roof either before closing or just after closing, and have that held back in escrow to alleviate those issues for the buyer.
HVAC. Is that
that's another, you know, big one, especially here. Nobody wants to go without, without AC. So I think, yeah, that's going to be one of those things where people want to see updated. They don't want to see, like, you know, they're all rusted on the outside, and, you know, it's still original with the 1975 house.
It makes a lot of when it starts up.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear that.
No, that's probably not a good idea.
I don't want to hear it come on. I don't want to hear it cut off.
No, but I think those are going to be the main factors. Everything else, people can kind of see themselves, and they can make improvements and change things and make it their own.
What about, I mean, I never have an issue with landscaping, because for some reason, I guess my upbringing, it was like I was programmed to understand yard work as therapy, and I love it.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite part of owning a home. But for those folks, is it important to make sure that that's up to par whenever you're selling the home, or does it just need to be right when you're taking the photos?
It's a nice to have. It's not a must have.
Right.
Now, if it's like overgrown, yeah, we've got problems to deal with.
Sure.
But I think, you know, when it really comes down to, you want to be able to see those first initial photos. If it looks good in the photos, what's funny to me is that we'll discuss pricing, and I'm like, okay, what's really wait to get a final price once we see the photos back and see how well the home looks in photos, because that's how everybody else is going to see it.
Sure.
And then we'll adjust, and a lot of times my photographer will go out and make the house look fantastic, but not too much, right? So you want it to where there's good expectations when they get there. And I'm like, you know, I think we can probably bump this up another 10 grand. It looks fantastic.
Sure.
You know, and then we'll have more exposure from there.
I know that when my pictures of my house were taken, it was cloudy.
Yeah.
It had been raining. The grass was not green because we're coming out of the winter, and had just like all that snow, like the Colorado like powder snow that killed everything. But man, when I got the pictures back, the driveway was soaking wet, right? But the sky was blue, the grass was green. I was like, this, but I'm very meticulous about it, right? So I actually went out and trimmed the grass and made sure everything was right, shaped the bushes, but the grass was like a brownish color. No, it was bright green in the pictures. Like, they did really fantastic work in these photos. But you could tell the driveway was soaking wet. Yeah,
well, and two, sometimes the green can be a little too green.
This one was
grass
perfect.
Can be a little green. Yeah. Because there's like this, like, well, that's some neon grass there. I don't know if I'm going to believe that. Yeah, so there's
a spray green.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's some adjusting there that needs to happen. Sure. But when a professional photographer goes out, they really do a great job, and that's what you want.
It was great. I mean, you're starting to get folks with drones that are getting drone shots of like the neighborhood, and the house.
Video.
I've seen drones going through houses.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you were talking about, you know, choosing the right agent. If the agent comes out and takes photos with their phone, you've already got the wrong agent.
Right.
That's a telltale sign right there. That's a red flag.
It's a great camera.
Yeah. It's not.
You're taking them?
Yeah.
You sell the house. Let somebody else take them. We do have a question here. What loans are available for first-time home buyers?
Well, it depends really on their credit. So FHA, of course, you have a 3.5% down payment. Conventional will go 5%, but USDA is 100%. So when I'm looking at, you know, first-time home buyers, I was dealing with one yesterday, and USD loans are basically a rural development loan outside of city limits. And once you find a home outside of city limits, you're much more likely to get 100% financing. A little things a little more flexible, those kind of things. But if you can find new construction that's in that price range you want, and then also outside the city limits, that's kind of a 2-for-1. And also the builders bring in a lot of incentives.
So hope that answers your question. There's a handful of options there.
Yeah, and I'm looking at one of my lenders to come on with me maybe next month or a month after, and we can discuss a lot of the lender questions. I think we get a lot too.
And there's some grant programs for those individuals that are first-time home buyers to helping with for some of those loans that require a larger down payment.
And it depends though. There's only a certain amount of money in those programs, and once it's gone, and then you have to wait till next year. So they're kind of in between sometimes, and sometimes they're available, sometimes they're not, depending on the time of the year.
You got to buy a house January 1st, basically.
Yeah. Well, and there again too, it depends on their budgeting and all those kind of things too. But yeah, it does factor in.
So we have a home video.
We do. This is a new listing that we have here from Social. We just got over the end of last week. You can see that kind of pond in the back, and this is what I really love about this house is that it backs up to this kind of rural lake out in Robinwood Village. And
I know where this is.
If you have this kind of hankering to every morning be out on with coffee, looking at the pond, and have wildlife and woodpeckers and ducks and all that kind of stuff, this is the house for sure, because that's what's so inviting about this house. It's a custom home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's got kind of a eating kitchen, morning room, stainless appliances, granite, all the fixins, as they say.
Great kitchen.
And it's a 5-year-old roof. So I think that's going to be a plus when it comes to insurance. Taxes are low up there, all that kind of stuff. Custom cabinets, just quality build.
I imagine homeowners insurance. Mine, when I was up that far, wasn't that bad either.
No, because of course the further you go up, the less you have issues with hurricanes, those kind of things. Yeah, with wind.
And this one, you said Robinwood, so it's literally across the highway if you're a golf player from the Grand Bear.
From the Grand Bear, yeah. And this one's $349,000. $349,000. I just listed this, and it was on the market before it was priced too high, and we've taken a haircut on that, so it's a $30,000 price reduction.
Nice.
So, but yeah, it's a fantastic house, and it's move-in ready to go.
You see that number 697-4636, justin.eagent.com. This isn't the only house you have listed.
Oh, no, of course.
You have many.
Yeah, and you can go to justin.eagent.com, and you can search whenever you want to. You can also do this too. You can just text eAgent to 59559, and wherever you are, doesn't matter if you're outside of the front of a house or you're just driving by, you can always just text this number, and the information for that house will pop up along with my number, and we can text back and forth about it, all that kind of stuff, set up a showing, whatever you want to do.
What if you see a house that's listed with another agency? Can they still reach out to you if they haven't got a deal agreement with another agent to represent them as the buyer?
Yeah, for sure. Just do this. Just text eAgent or text my number, and you can get information on the house and also get in touch with me.
Perfect. All right. I don't think we left anything out.
I think the only thing I'm thinking of is my wife, we were talking about, I think we need to start a new segment, The Bald and the Beautiful.
Yes. Yes. You heard it here. We're going to work on that.
That's right.
We're going to work on that. It's going to be an unlimited timed show, and we're just going to go. It's unscripted like this, and we're just going to go.
I'm loving it. Yeah.
The producers are cheering for us in the control room. You can't hear it, but I'm certain that that's what's happening right now. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Expert Alert this week with Justin Allen from eAgent. If you're looking to buy a home, if you're looking to sell your home, and you have questions, you don't know what to do next, you don't know how to improve, you don't know if you should improve, you don't know how you should price it. There's 100,000 questions that will come up. Give him a call at that number 697-4636. Or reach out to him, justin.eagent.com, or text eAgent to 59559. He can get you set up. We will see you here next month, possibly with a mortgage
lender. Yeah, I'm looking to get Chris Lander from Gulf South Mortgage. I'm calling you out. You're coming on TV with me.
Chris, it's done. Just go ahead and check it off the list. It's done. We'll see you next month. All right, thanks, Justin. We'll see you guys next Thursday for another edition of Expert Alert.
Thank you for joining us for Expert Alert. We'll feature more experts at the same time next Thursday.